Well, hello and welcome to today's show. Now, this particular show is just additional content, original content for people who might actually think about doing some individual property development from farmland where water isn't there. Now, to start it off, I have to tell you that I am not currently licensed by the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation as a water treatment specialist. This is just a view of my old setup to give you some kind of idea of what to work with, because a lot of times, you see the little boxes on some of the old rural land. You don't know really what's in it, what's not in it. It's just a little box. Well, I'll show you my little tank house, or however you want to call it, show you my little setup. Don't use it now for potable water. It's actually on the city water as it goes. Much more convenient, well worth the money if you can get a hold of it, because it just takes quite a bit of effort and time to get things going. Now, I'm not going to explain what these things really do in this little video. I'm just going to walk through of the piping, of how mine laid out. You do your own house, you do it any way you want to. I will identify the components in there for you, but and I'll get right to that, I suppose, just right after this message from my sponsor. If you have real property to sell in the greater Murfreesboro, Rutherford County area, then call Dale to sell at Benchmark Realty, 615-409-SOLD. That's 7653 or 615-809-2323. Well, let's start at the beginning. Now, you see down there by the sleeve, that is coming up from the well. Comes up, goes through that union. See, we have the nice little isolation valve. You can't probably see all the way back, but it just comes up, turns right back around and into that union and the other union and this other union. Okay, now what this is for is that's the flow switch, and that tells us when we're pumping water from below so that we need to turn our little chlorinator on. Now I have right there, what's it say? Raw water test. So we haven't done anything to it except aerate it at this point in time. And if we need to, we can take a little sample out of that point right there. We come up, another union, goes through, a little check valve to keep us from bumping back down the hill, comes up, another union. We love these unions. Come around, we have a lot of turns. Now that's for a couple different reasons. Some of it is for mechanically getting it in there. Others are actually causes a little bit of back pressure, and that's not necessarily bad, but it's also usable because it gives us a little leverage to work with. If I can come back around, there's a little, so you might be able to see it. There's a little stand in the back. It just comes up. Each elbow, each nine, each device adds resistance or back pressure to the pump down below, which will cut down on your pump curve. So now we come back up through the check valve, come back up to these little guys, drop down to the bottom. Now, this kind of seems a little eerie, a little weird, but this is our chlorine injection point, and I'll take it back when we hit the chlorinator over there. But this chlorine injection is heading at a low spot because this is going to create turbulence. These 90s in a row are going to create turbulence, which will help mix that bleach in when it comes through here. It comes up into a bigger picture. Let me back up for it. Alright, now if I can go all the way back without tripping over anything, you see what we have here. That's the injection, chlorine injection comes up and comes across. This right here comes down. That's labeled bypass. Guess what that is? That's a bypass. What is it bypassing? It's bypassing that filter right here. And see, there we go. Now we've got this right here. So if we want to go on bypass, we close that valve and we open that one, and it lets water bypass that filter. Not real hard. We leave it open, and what it does is water is able to run up through here, has to go through that filter and out the other side, and it's blocked off at the top. Now this other little valve here is a little blowback, a little drain valve, because if we're pressurized in the tank, pressure tank over here below, we come up, we're pushing back against this. If we isolate down at the bottom, we can actually blow water out of the tank as long as we have a couple psi on it and push it back. Comes right out, comes up over the top, runs over the top, down into here, and we lose it into a structure that I'll have to explain a little bit that drains out toward the pond. Coming back. So we've had several, after the chlorine injection, we had several turns. And we have this guy. This is a pre-filter. It's just sort of a mechanical filter. It looks like one of those guys right there. Okay, so it's just a sediment filter. And it's in there. That also works as what we would call a static mixer. It actually causes that bleach that we already have in a turbulent flow to mix in better with the water. So now we come out of here, come down this tube, and now we split the two tanks. Well, this is a little hard to show the size and dimensions of the room, but this tank is the bladder tank, or you might call them a diaphragm tank, except this one actually has a bag like the old Playtex baby milk. It shrinks down all around the sides. It's a little bit better than a bladder tank, which is just a little diaphragm that's fixed in the middle, and it kind of bellies up and bellies down. Tank has a little drain valve, and we come over this one, it has a little drain valve. That little blue guy, that's a check valve. And it's going the wrong direction, what you might think. That's designed so that the pressure is pushing out against the valve, so that if we ever pull a vacuum, if I ever shut her down and I pull a vacuum, it can suck air into the system. See, because they don't do what these fiberglass tanks do not do well. This has a bladder, this one does not. These fiberglass tanks are fairly brittle and they don't like being pulled in a vacuum. So these two tanks float on the same pressure. Okay, now we come to this tank, this big tall tank, 120 gallon tank. This is what we call a contact tank. The purpose of this tank, if I can get back into it, the purpose of this tank is it allows the water and bleach to have a length of time that they hang together, that they touch and they kill and they disinfect. I can run all the bleach in the world, but there's some organisms like the Giardia lambia, which it needs a contact time for it to soak in past that cyst and kill the critter inside. Now when we come out of it, we love our union. It's a little shaky. We'll come across. Now we come down to this, and this is a test. This is the post-bleaching test valve, so that we can see how much chlorine we have in the system. And if we just drop right down here, we find two chlorinators. One that's not connected up to anything because it's pretty well much dead, and it was always have two up here until just recently. One was a backup to the other, but they both went bad. So when I fired the well back up, I had to get a new chlorinator. Now, this is probably one of the better pumps, and I'll go into detail in the future, but what it does is it pulls bleach from that container up and pushes it around the wall and down here and eventually right there in that injection point. So if we need to take our raw water, we come down to here, which is right out of being aerated, if we just need to take a sample for biologically active or any of that stuff, we can pull it there. We need a treated. We take it right there to see if we have our residual chlorine. And we have to flush a certain amount of it out, you see, because there's a dead pipe right there. So we'll have to open it out when we run a few gallons. Come around the top, around the top, around the top. Come down here in this. Let me see if I can back up without breaking any pipes. All right. We see we have straight down here to a water valve and to a large tank. This is a odor and filter tank. Okay, it's just basically activated charcoal. Got a bunch of ground up, cooked up coconut husk, I think is what that is in there. Okay, now it flows into it. If we're coming this way with the water, we come down, and then in is this way, and it comes into the filter, and we come back out of the filter this way and down. So it has a valve. It's called bypassing. Guess what that does? It bypasses. So if I need to work on the filter, I can just close off that top and bottom black valves, open the one in the middle, and then I'm actually still have water during the time it takes to do my work. Now see, now what is this about? Now this is hopefully taking out my excess chlorine, because it's kind of hard to balance a bleach system on a simple flow switch like we have in my house, my well house. So what it does is it takes over any extra, so it takes that out, but it gives a little bit, it just gives a little bit of wiggle room. Now we'll come over here to our flow meter. We come down out of the flow meter into a check valve. This is to keep from the water from the house from backing up, so that we don't lose pressure backside of there. And then we go down out toward the house. Before we go out toward the house, if I can get the camera in there, we see that other little piece comes up, comes around, comes out, and that is right there. That is a hose bib on the outside of the house. So it's pretty straightforward. Now I did talk to you a little bit about this pipe here. It is a drain pipe. It lets me to backflow, backwash that pre-filter housing first, and it comes right through that check valve into a drain and down through the drain that goes out and then toward the pond, and it's just gray water at that point. Okay, come up. Now I have something else here. Let's go back over. So where we were, our post-treated water, we go in, we're filtered, we come out of the filter, out this way, come down, and we're ready to go toward the house. Now remember that piece of pipe goes to the hose bib? Well, right somewhere in here, let me find where she is. Yep, there it is. Coming out of that stem is a piece of poly pipe which turns around, comes up, goes over to here, and then to that little guy. That's a valve. It's a solenoid valve tied to a timer. Right there, which is a sprinkler timer, and all that does is waters my goats. Comes out there. There is the solenoid. Here is the valve, and we do the same thing because we flush water in through the drain line, and the drain line comes down and goes out. Now I'll show you in a minute the goat pond out there. The goat, less a goat or two, but it runs the water trough. There's one last line here. If we come back up, come out, there's another check valve and a hose line that comes back and runs into the back of the filter there. Because this is the backwash. Now currently I have the device unplugged because I don't exactly want, and I go up here to see that. See, there it is. Because since there's nothing but the goats on this at the point, I'm not really using enough water, and rather than letting this guy run for 30 minutes at several hundred gallons, which by the way are not metered on the water meter there because it's upstream of it, this guy just wastes a lot of water. Wasting a lot of water comes over here and it wastes a lot of bleach. So I just temporarily have the backwash, the automatic backwash here off. I can plug her back in and manually do that. Let's go outside. Right, the drain that comes out of the building, out of the well building, comes out, and it's got a little weep hole at the bottom to make sure it doesn't freeze up, but then it comes and it runs out the top. So that little sprinkler timer, what it's doing is every night for 10 minutes it turns the water on and keeps that goat tank full, so I don't have to mess with it. Now as you can see, we're out of goats. We're nice and we're lush and we're green, and we need to get some critters back in here.